Hi guys, Alex Peak Performance Reviews. Welcome to another vlog and welcome to another car review. Today we have, you would have seen from the title, we have the second generation Honda NSX. Yes, it is discontinued, but the whole point of this video today is more for people who are in the market to buy one second hand. Is it a viable, really fun, good kind of choice? I mean, I'm sure you'll agree with me. The car looks absolutely stunning. It's quite an interesting one. It's in an amazing orange colour. I'll give you the exact spec in the bio. And the reason why it's quite rare and crazy is these ones were only available in the pre-facelift. There was actually a facelifted version in this second generation NSX. So it's quite a rare colour in the facelift. Actually, for me, absolutely stunning car. It's got the carbon ceramic pack on it, as well as the carbon fibre pack, so the carbon pack. So it's basically a fully loaded car that was £150,000 and probably ended up life at about £160,000–170,000. So it's a proper bit of kit. Is it justifiable to spend that kind of money on something which is effectively a Honda? I'm going to drive it and let you guys know. I'm so excited to kind of bring you this review, and I'm really excited to take this out on the roads and give it a rip. Anyway, hope you enjoy. If you've got any questions, as always, hit us up in the comment section. Let's go and drive the car and enjoy. So yeah, on to the driving, and yeah, let's give you a little brief history in the world of Honda NSX. So obviously there was a Gen 1 version which was pretty damn good in an era of amazing Japanese supercars, or kind of supercars at times, or sports GT cars. The first gen Honda NSX being one, and what a car it was, developed with Ayrton Senna. It just was an absolute driver's weapon. So much so that Gordon Murray ended up owning one, and he owned one for quite a few years, and his words were he held it very dear to his heart, and he loved it so much that he went to the powers that be and the bods at Honda, and he actually asked them if they wanted to co-develop a car. Basically, he felt that the NSX didn't have enough power, or had a lot of power but could have done with even more, and that the chassis would take far much more power than it originally had. So he went to the guys at Honda and said, let's make a more powerful version. Honda said no, and he went and made the McLaren F1. Obviously, as we know, that was pretty damn special. But yeah, obviously that just shows you how much kind of history and accolade there is with the Honda NSX. And onto the Gen 2 Honda NSX, which we're in today, it's brought it on far further than obviously the Gen 1. There has been quite a gap. Production ceased to exist on the Gen 1, 2006 I believe, and this one started life in 2016. There was a facelifted version, which this one is, and you'll notice it's in a super rare orange colour. I believe, and I can only say I believe, that it's a super rare colour because they actually never produced this orange in a facelifted version, so it's a bit of a freak of nature as such. Let's talk tech specs. So 573 brake horsepower with 479 foot-pounds of torque in a car that weighs 1,789 kg I believe, but this carbon packed car weighs in at about 729 kg. I think it like sheds about 50 kg of weight by having that carbon pack. This also has the optional carbon ceramic brakes as well. So where this started life in a facelifted version at 149,000, or around 150,000 pounds, this one probably was closer to 170,000 pounds. Eye-watering for a Honda. However, is it kind of justifiable money? Are they still that amount of money? I don't know. They're still fetching a lot of money, and I suspect they will be worth even more than that. But that is the point of this video. Are you in the market for something like this, and is it a viable or a worthwhile purchase? I'm going to kind of explain that. So staying on the old fact of tech specs, 0 to 60 on this car is 2.9 seconds, which is crazy absolutely crazy, and a top speed of 191. Now, how does this car put down 0 to 60 in 2.9 seconds? I'll tell you why. It has an all-wheel drive platform system, and it has a Powertrain all-wheel drive system called an SH all-wheel drive. It's basically a super handling all-wheel drive, and basically in lots of the different modes you can make the car milder or wilder, to the extent you can basically make it have a 30-70 distribution on whatever way you want. So you can have it having 70% on the front wheels and 30 on the rear, or the other way round. And because of this, you can have something that really looks after you but is still fun, or you can have something that feels really, really wild in track. So basically, effectively, like I said, going through the different modes in the dynamic mode roller, which we've got down here, you can put it into a quiet mode. Quiet mode effectively, and I'm just changing it there, puts the powertrain into the most mild of kind of settings. It also puts the all-wheel drive settings into the most mild settings, as well as the traction being in the most kind of mild settings, as well as the suspension and the steering. What I love about this car is the steering feels beautiful even in the low quiet mode, and that is one of my bugbears on some cars, even so-called sports cars. I know some people like soft steering, maybe low down in situations where you're around town. I get that, but in general, on a sports car or a supercar, you want to have a fairly stiff rack. And when I say that, I'm not trying to be naughty. A stiff rack is basically something that feels tight, and when you turn, you get a really dynamic, connected feel to the road. This one, even on quiet mode, has a really direct, connected feel. So let's talk modes, dynamic modes as such. There's a kind of roller adjuster, almost like a cow switch, and it's like a little dial, rotary dial, down here, and it can change into lots of different modes. Essentially, it goes from mild to wild, and rest assured, it really does go from mild to wild. In quiet mode, it puts everything very, very basic. So soft suspension, softer steering response, and a looser rack, which is good around town. It puts it in a more higher state in its EV range. Before I go on to much more, I'm going to explain the powertrain on this car. It has obviously 576 horsepower, as I did say before, and it has that power mainly through a petrol combustion motor. It's a 3.5 litre V6 twin turbo engine, and it has a little backup with 3 electric motors, and that gives it that total power. And depending on what mode you go in, it does different things. So it harvests the motor, the brakes, to put power back into the electric motor. Because I've had it in quiet mode for quite a while, my electric or battery power is going down. So if it goes down to a critical level, it will power up the motor again to allow it to recharge and regen. But on these lower modes, effectively all it's doing is it's really using the electric motors and the power from the electric motors. Yeah, rack feel and steering response, even on the low kind of quiet mode, is what they call it, is really still quite nice. And what I mean by a tight rack and a kind of dynamic rack is that if you kind of just do a little bit of left or right movement, you'll probably see the car and the camera moving. It has a really direct, connected feel to the road. And some people like loose, soft feeling steering or light feeling steering. I don't, but this is perfect even around town in quiet mode. But as we put it into the sports mode, that will change the powertrain, the SH all-wheel drive mode, the VSA, which is like the traction, the suspension, the steering, into a slightly higher state. Not so much in sports, that only really changes the drivetrain feel and the way it kind of regens and does all of that thing, and when it turns on the motor. But when you go into sports, it changes quite a lot of things. It changes the powertrain, the traction settings, as well as the all-wheel drive biased in, so how much rear wheel bias there is. And obviously it opens the valves up at the back and you can hear a lot more behind you, and it really is an orchestra of sound, which is amazing. Obviously the motor is just behind you, as well as the electric motors in the front, and you can really, what I love about this car is it has a real, like I say, orchestra of a symphony of motor sounds and a little bit of electric, dump valves from the like blow-off valves on this car, and it really has got a lovely sound when you put it into the sports mode. When you put it into track mode, you've got to kind of hold it to the right a little bit longer. I have done that. I'm not going to do it now because the conditions have got worse. It really is quite a wild little car. It still looks after you, but my goodness, is it wilder. It will step out and it will snake around, all at the same time. The super handling all-wheel drive does a really good job of getting you back in track. It sends 100% of power to individual wheels and kind of does what it needs to do using kind of an active yaw control and active biased in differentials, and it will just actively adjust and kind of put power to the correct wheels and what wheels it feels to stabilize itself and get it back in check. But yeah, like I say, in Sports Plus mode, this is just, I think, close to pure perfection as it gets. Steering response and the way the rack feels is just incredible. And even on slick or really dewy, damp roads, the feel of this car and the connection you get to the tarmac is still absolutely A1. It is absolutely superb. Now, I know a lot of people, or a few media bods, have said and complained about the interior. On this facelifted one, I really don't see the issue. It feels like a high-end Jag, so decently high-end. Yes, it doesn't probably feel quite so much like a £150,000, £170,000 car in here, but it still feels really special. And when you connect your phone to it, especially through Apple Play, CarPlay, which I've got on now, it feels really, really good. It's very quick responding on the touchscreen, and to me, it's everything you need in a car without it being over complex, and it does everything it needs to do. It's obviously very, very well spec'd up in here, and it's got, again, everything you need in this car without being over complex and unnecessary. This car is a driver's tool which is really connected and is great fun. There's some great roads around here, and like I say, it's damp and dewy, but this absolutely makes mincemeat of this kind of road, and it's just superb. One of the other interesting facts is, you know, this car is something special, a bit like something like the Porsche GT3, and you're probably thinking, are you mentioning a GT3 against this kind of car? Yes, I am, because I tell you what, it wouldn't be a million miles off it. And this also shares something that the GT3 also has. This has a dry sump system. Now, if you don't know what that is, I explained it on my Porsche GT3 video. Basically, a dry sump is a very clever, sophisticated lubrication system that you see on full-blown race cars that basically allows special high-end lubrication to the engine components during high G-force loading corners. So it basically splash lubricates and makes sure that all the engine components are lubricated, and it will allow maximum performance when you're really hacking this car around track, and it will keep this car really safe during, like, you know, a big track session or heavy road use, probably mainly a track session. But again, another thing, it's one of these things that's just a technical marvel. It's a bit like when you see how the engine developers and the technicians develop something like, say, a Bugatti Veyron. This has 11 radiators throughout the system, keeping this car cool, and boy does it show. You've got to see how loaded and compact and tight and compressed that engine bay is, but one thing I've noticed is even when it was warmer earlier on when I was driving this, and some of the other days I've had this out in, no matter how hard I push this, it's got to be one of the lowest temperature readings I've ever seen on a car. It's really odd. Normally, a normal zone for a car is the middle of the needle, and this one just sits way below the middle, and I think it is genuinely because of all those 11 radiators doing their thing, which is just incredible. It just basically means that you can push this car hard as much as there's so much tech and heat that's probably in there. These radiators are pulling that temperature out of the motor compartment. And it's just incredible. This car is just a pure technological masterpiece, and I absolutely adore it. Like I say, going back to kind of the drivetrain, what the electric motors do in this is very similar to something like, say, a 918 Porsche. It basically infills between power gaps, and what I mean by power gaps is potential lag. So obviously this car has two turbochargers that are a fair bit of size. Obviously there's a lot of CFM and volumetric efficiency on these kind of engines at 3.5 litres that will allow that turbocharger to spool. However, there's always going to be a little bit of lag when you put your foot down, but not with a car like this, because those little electric motors are just basically allowing infill just between lag, essentially. So they're basically pushing the car along while it's having a bit of lag, and then you don't notice the lag, if that makes sense. It's all really, really clever stuff, and it just marries so well to this drivetrain, and it just works so good. And I have to say, I absolutely adore this car. It's one of the best cars I've ever driven. So yeah, let's talk more about the ride quality as we go over these lumpy, bumpy B roads. Yeah, handling is absolutely superb. So a lot of people are going to want to know if it's too harsh and too hard. Now, it's not, because again, it's got those active dampeners, and they work an absolute treat. Much like something like the FKA. It's almost witchcraft how these techs manage to do and make something that is so good at the best of both worlds. It can be really subtle, really pliant at kind of low down speeds, whenever you want it to be, when you put it in a kind of quiet mode, but also when you want to hack on and push on a little bit more. The suspension is amazing. It's perfectly damped in every individual setting, and the handling is just nothing short of quite sublime, to the extent this car does around 7 minutes 34. I'll correct myself if I'm wrong. 7 minutes 34 around the Nordschleife Nürburgring, and anyone who's in the know will know that that was properly set quite some time ago, and it's nothing short of mind-blowing. I mean, that for a hybrid car that weighs, you know, just over 1.7 ton, it is absolutely sublime. And to be honest with you, driving this car over the last week, it really doesn't surprise me in the slightest. This car is just superb. Let's talk about the design and just the general looks of this car. Now, for me, it's a bit like someone saying, if you think this car is ugly, I would say you've probably got something wrong with you. It's a bit like someone maybe saying that Miley Kulis is ugly. I mean, this car, from any angle you look at, is just so pretty and so stunning, especially with the carbon pack on it and the carbon ceramic brakes, which, yeah, you may say, what am I on about? How can brakes be beautiful? I'm sure there'll be plenty of people, or there at least should be, in the comment section, where brakes, alloys, things like that can definitely be sexy, and carbon ceramic brakes are definitely sexy, and they do look good. And aside from that, yeah, the car just looks amazing, especially on this carbon pack car. From the carbon splitter to the carbon diffuser, the carbon side skirts, as well as that beautiful carbon roof. There's carbon everywhere on the steering wheel, in the engine bay, and for me, if you could still buy it with a carbon pack and these weren't discontinued, I would have one definitely with a carbon pack. And if you are looking for one, try and find one with a carbon pack, definitely, because it does set the car off. It takes it from a really good looking car to a next level looking car, and the attention and the look I've got in this car has been insane. Everyone's looking at it, everyone's wanting to take photos of it, and everyone's complimenting it wherever you park it and drive it. And it's just absolutely stunning. One of the, I wouldn't say it's quirks, it's a very Ferrari thing actually, is the offset size of the alloys. This has 19-inch alloys on the front and 20-inch alloys on the rear, and they come shrouded with this absolutely superb Continental Sports Contact 6 tyre, but you can or could get it with the optional Trofeo R's, which obviously are crazy, and if I was in these conditions, I'm not sure I'd be too happy about hacking around these roads like I am today. But yeah, the looks and everything else are an absolute marvel, and it is absolutely stunning. Gorgeous, gorgeous car. Now I'm going to talk about it. I don't think many people will care too much about it, but I think you'll be pretty impressed at the same time. Miles per gallon, or miles per gallon should I say, but no, genuinely speaking, miles per gallon, this car being a hybrid is pretty impressive. Some people will say, well, that ain't that impressive. For a near 1.8 tonne car, or just over a 1.7 tonne car, you better believe it is very, very impressive, because it definitely is. This has been doing, over the week I've had it, about 30 miles per gallon. Yes, 30 miles per gallon. I'm not even joking. If you are careful with the way you run this car and you keep putting it into quiet around low kind of speed roads like what I'm in now, I'm going to put it in comfort, or quiet, I always call it comfort, in quiet mode, it basically will put the powertrain into a full EV mode, and normally when you're about below 30 miles an hour or even 40 miles per hour, as long as you're gentle with the throttle input, it will go into pure EV, which I'm actually in now. And effectively, I'm going to say it in terms of time, based on what I've noticed, you probably can drive it in full EV mode, depending on how your throttle application is, for probably something like a full 5 minutes, and then it will auto regen when the motors come back on, and when it recharges you can go again into EV mode. So you probably could get even more crazy miles per gallon. I would have, if I had a bit more time, I probably would have done a quirky video on something like that, but I believe Sam from Seen Through Glass has done a video exactly doing that around London, where you can just have it in pure EV mode, which is really, really good. And yeah, you can literally get crazy miles per gallon on this car. It generally returns 26 to 28 miles per gallon with a bit of both worlds, so kind of a bit of putting your foot down, a bit of being careful. But you can get it over 30 miles per gallon if you're really careful without too much of an issue. But yeah, if you put your foot down, it's going to be way less than that. At the end of the day, it's a near 600 horsepower supercar. But if you want to be careful with it and you drive it careful, you could go to a workplace that's quite close and return crazy miles per gallon out of this car. A lot of people are not going to care about this part of the video, but I just thought I'd share that. Pretty cool. Another thing I haven't touched on that much is sound. As I drop it down, boy does it sound good. And I tell you what, it gets a bit snaky. If you push it on, this car is a little animal, and I love that, but it sounds so good. This 3.5 litre V6 is absolutely sweet. Engine response is beautiful, and the handling is just so good. It just feels beautiful, and it just hangs on. I say, even in these conditions, it's just a marvel. Handling is superb. Right, so that is the end of the video and the end of, yeah, my car review. I'm going to try and summarise what I think of this car. I've had it obviously for quite a few days now, and I've had a good opportunity to drive this a lot. And I just have to say, it's absolutely blown my mind. It has reiterated in my head what Honda can do with a car, and it makes me excited for the future. To think that that is a hybridized system, is basically part electric, part petrol combustion, is absolutely superb. And the complexity, but how it goes about its way to, you know, get all the power down to the ground as a functional, amazing supercar is just nothing short of incredible. And I absolutely adore this car. I want one so bad, but I can only imagine they're going to keep going up in value. But if you're in the market for one and you've got the money and you're thinking about it, honestly, go drive one. You won't be disappointed, and just go get one. Look at it, absolutely stunning. Anyway, hope you enjoyed the video, guys. As always, like, share, comment, subscribe. See you again in the next one. Bye for now.